Hey Zaga, sorry, I was chasing my dog around. I will hydrate and stretch. Yeah, she kept trying to go under the bed, so I kept just trying to get her out of from under the bed. Was it which dragon was it? Did you have to use the three essences to open up the door, or was it just a random dragon? Yeah, I found that dragon as well. I wonder if it's still there, because I think I fought that dragon. I'm gonna check to see if it's still there actually before I do this quest. Perfect. I'm glad you're back because I just read this. Hello, Claudia. Welcome, welcome. I was just about to say, I'm glad you guys are here because this Silas Codex, is very interesting. It talks about Silas being not just the god of the hearth, but an architect and builder of Arlathan itself. And they were mentioning that, oh, darn it. There we go. They were mentioning that they worked hand in hand with a healer whose name was like scratched out and like they were forgotten. And I'm thinking, okay, so normally when in ancient Egypt, when a name is crossed out, it is an opponent or an adversary of the person whose name was crossed out, or it was the fact that the person who had their names crossed out was doing something very, very bad, and they needed to be forgotten. And that leads me to believe that the healer was one of the forgotten ones, like Ananias. And I'm beginning to wonder if what they said about the forgotten ones, there was a theory that the forgotten ones were actually the good ones and the Evanuris were not. And I'm beginning to believe that maybe that isn't so far from the truth. They may actually be just as bad, or they may actually be slightly better. I don't think they were like benevolent and good people. Like I still think that they were not the greatest people. As you can see with the controlling, if you've done Bilar's personal quest with the controlling. But yeah, I thought that this was very interesting that they are starting to mention more and more about the Forgotten Ones, and they're becoming more in light. And I just think that's so good. A lot of people have complaints about the writing, and I'm not a big fan of the writing in terms of the dialogue with the companions, but the lore that we get in the codex has been just chef's kiss, 10 out of 10. I love it. I've been reading every single one of the codexes that have come in. In previous games, I would not, but ever since I started working with the editors of the DA Wiki, I've started trying to incorporate more lore into my knowledge because it is just so in depth. And the fact that they've taken ancient Egyptian culture and applied it to this pantheon, it's amazing. I think that's really, really great how they did that. Yeah, it is interesting. Honestly, some people say it feels rushed. I don't think it feels rushed. I think it just feels half-hearted. And a lot of the writing was actually done before the layoffs happened. So it's not a matter of, oh, all the writers were fired. That's not the case because a lot of the writing was already done. Um, it just feels a lot of people say that it feels like they've taken a lot of like for instance, some people would say Maker's Breath. Yeah, it feels very young. It doesn't feel like an established. It feels like a young adult book. No offense to any young adults watching this, but or young adult authors. It just feels like a young adult book, where a lot of the established verbiage, yes, a lot more modern, exactly. So, for instance, somebody mentioned that curse words are very prevalent in this game, like the S word, F word, and all that stuff. But in the previous games, you would hear stuff like Andraste's, ass, or, Maker's Breath, stuff like that. And that was very on par with, the culture. And granted, I totally believe 100% that in fantasy worlds they did use words like shit, fuck, bitch, and all that stuff. And excuse my French. But yes, I do believe that they use those words. But in this game, it just feels, yes, in Drastic Flaming Knickers, exactly. In this game, it just feels so like in your face that it doesn't feel the same. Um, Another complaint that I have is with Tosh. A lot of times when Tosh is saying something, it's that's messed up. That's messed up. And I'm just like, okay, yes, we get it's messed up. And granted, she's young, or they are young. They are a young character. Um, it's the same complaint that a lot of people had about Lucanus only being all about his coffee. Coffee this, coffee that. And I totally get it. There are people out there in the world who can relate to that. They need their coffee. But it's very awkward for the setting that they are in. It's like Lucanus waking up and saying, I need to go to Starbucks. I need my fix, you know? That's kind of what it feels like to me. The other thing I did want to say, just since we're talking about this, and I'm going to do like a whole like TikTok video series of my reviews, but in terms of like the dialogue, they said that this was supposed to be the most romantic, the most steamiest romance of all the games. And from what I've seen, just from what I've watched on YouTube, because I don't care if I spoil it for myself, but what I've seen, it doesn't feel that spicy. It doesn't feel that like heart-wrenching or like give me butterflies. I'm not giddy. I'm not running through the lighthouse trying to find my loved one to kiss. And I think that's really what it is that they took away the ability to approach your companions and talk to them individually at your choice. So like in Origins, you can go to the campsite and you could literally click on your companions and have the same talks. I can't remember how it was in Dragon Age 2, but the same could be done in Inquisition. You didn't get a whole lot of banter in Inquisition after you've kind of run through the cycle, but you could still at least click on them to see if something was new. And you don't get that option to kiss your Roma. And granted, the excuse could be Rook has a lot more going on. So romance is kind of like at the back of the mind, but the same could be said about the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor had some, some shit going on as well, and the Inquisitor still found time to make those romances just really hit. Yeah, it doesn't feel personal. Now, what I do like about the writing is that in this game, they have made it to where it is a lot focused on the everyday people of Thedas. Now, a big miss, and I haven't gotten into the game that far yet. I'm still in the beginning of Act 2, so I don't know if this happens later. But I would think that since it's so focused on the people of Thedas, the ordinary people, the everyday people, not anybody in power, you would think that they would actually have more involvement from like people like the Red Jennies. The Red Jennies have been mentioned throughout all the games, and they were prevalent in Inquisition, and you would think with Sarah turning the Red Jennies into something of a more organized circle, that they would be more prevalent in Veilguard. And I don't think I've really seen any mention, like in all the codexes that I've read, I've not seen anything yet. And that bothers me. I think there's been one reference so far that I've seen to the Red Jennies, maybe two, and that was gear. You get a unique piece of gear that references the Jennies and bees. And that bothers me. I mean, I think that they could have definitely served as a faction. So, because they are similar almost to the Shadow Dragons, where their goal is to help the little one, like the little people, the little folks. And that's what this whole game is about, is helping the common everyday person. And we don't really see, so that was a huge missed opportunity, in my opinion, incorporating more of the Red Jennies. But anyways, I'm ranting. I'm gonna save the rest of my review for like after. After actually, I might start ranting a little bit more now that I'm halfway or at the midpoint. I might start ranting a little bit more, but it's just it bothers me that there's some opportunities that were missed, and then there were like things that they felt absolutely important to include, and it wasn't that important at all. Yes, getting very close. I just got out of the battle against the dragons, so now what I'm doing is my usual everyday, companion quest. But I do think that the issue with the companions isn't that it's, rushed. I just think it doesn't feel personal anymore. You're one quest away from point of no return. Yeah, I think my next run is going to be the worst. So this is going to be the best ending possible that you can get. I think my next run I'm going to make it where it's the worst possible ending you can get. Okay, going back to Tosh, I really like these little Tosh talks about dragons, and I wish they expanded on that a little bit more. I wish that that was more of their personal quest and not so much their identity. I think their identity that could it didn't need to be stretched out so much. Um, and I get it; it's a slow process. People coming to terms with who they are, and that's totally valid. But considering how much love and knowledge Tosh has about the dragons, I feel like that should have been their focus. Um, because we're finding out things about the dragons, about the old gods and the dragons, and we're finding out about dragons getting blighted when before, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, before they said that dragons couldn't be blighted. And here we are, we have multiple dragons being blighted. We have um, in Inquisition, we had the red lyrium dragon. And then if a dragon was blighted, it was actually an archdemon. So I feel like there's so much new dragon lore and so many new dragons. It could have definitely have been a better focus for Tosh, I think, in my opinion. It seems like Tosh's entire personality has been made about the gender stuff rather than focusing on all the really cool stuff about them, like the fire breathing and his. Exactly. Exactly. Tosh, they just by introducing the fact that Tosh can breathe fire, they had missed an opportunity to discuss where um, it could have definitely have been discussed where that really comes from and explored more. And that honestly, over the dragons, I would much rather have done a personal quest to find out more about the fire breathing because that means that we're finding more about the origins of the Canary. Um, and I do agree that their whole self-discovery quest could have definitely been handled like with Dorian or Krem, where we just have like a couple of convos about it. There's a quest, we accept things and move on to more things. Yeah, exactly. Because when you make it the whole identity, it kind of becomes, and this is not just with Tasha's self-discovery path. This is the same thing with, like for instance, Balara being consumed by and I love Balara's quest. I love Balara, but she spends a great deal of time just like in her grief, and it's like okay, this doesn't need to stretch the whole game. let's do something a little bit more. Here's one big quest to like kind of hash that out and move on. Lucanus, I think stretching his out is good, stretching out his problem because that is such a very big problem to have being um, possessed by a demon despite not being a mage. I think that is a very big quest that shouldn't be rushed. But like Balara's quest, Tasha's personal quest, um, Nev's, I honestly with Nev, it's not even about her personal quest. It's about helping her complete cases. And great, but I wish I did more of a personal quest for her. And I don't know if she has one. It doesn't feel like all the personal quests that I've done for her were for her specifically. Um, Davrin's, I don't think should be rushed. I think they paced Davrin's personal quest out really well. Same with Harding's. Definitely paced that out, pretty well also. Um, but the other companions, Emmerich's, I don't know too much about Emmerich's, but from what I do know, I think the pacing on his is also pretty good. There's just a few companions that I think their their personal quest could have been something else, or it could have been multiple different personal quests versus taking this one personal quest and stretching it out so long and kind of beating a dead horse with it, if that makes any sense.